Hey, so like with so many of our Xero tips videos, we're jumping into the demo company to show you how to add a new category or account code into your Xero. As mentioned, from time to time, you might want to add a new account code to make sure that the reporting and information you're getting out of Xero makes sense and supports you as a business owner in decision making, helping you to grow your business. It's really important that you customize Xero so that the language, the headings really suit your unique business. Because whilst the ones that come out of the box with Xero are really useful and very common, every business has its own individual areas that you want to focus on, own individual cost categories that you want to be able to highlight. And that's why it's worth spending a little bit of time making sure to customize the chart of accounts. So, what is the chart of accounts? Well, the chart of accounts is a list of all those categories. So your income, your expenses, other bits and pieces that fall within the reporting within Xero. And so when you're picking a journal, when you're adding an invoice or a bill, when you are putting a bank payment through, you'll have that drop down with all the categories in. And the chart of accounts is where all of those categories are listed and where we can control. So we can add, edit, or remove from that chart of accounts. So how do we get there? Well, at the top of Xero, we have our menu, and we want to go to the accounting menu. Now, for any reason that accounting menu isn't showing, it will be to do with permissions. So you'll need to go to your Xero subscriber and ask them to increase your permissions to such a point that you can see this menu if you can't currently get into it. You can then get into the chart of accounts a number of ways, either through the advanced section of the menu, or you'll see you have a star advanced menu at the bottom. So these are your favorites from within the main advanced menu. What do I mean by that? Well, if you click on advanced, you'll see we have lots of different areas that we can go into, and some of them have stars next to them. Like so many bits of Xero, you can customize this to make sure it suits your needs. For example, earlier I ticked tracking categories because with a lot of our clients, we like to track certain projects. And so we will add a project code into the tracking categories. And because we do that quite frequently, I want to be able to easily access it from my menu, reduce the number of clicks together. If you haven't got chart of accounts ticked on here, then obviously you can get to it through here and clicking on the menu item on the right. Here we can now see our full chart of accounts. Now, it may look a little bit alien to start with, and that's completely okay. The main thing to focus on is the name of the category or account and the type and VAT rate. The other bits and pieces will largely take care of themselves. And whilst Xero prompts you to put a code in, actually, if you don't put a code in, it doesn't affect the way the system works. So you can see it's broken down into different areas, and you've also got tabs across the top, including archive on the right. So it's important to note at this time, you can't actually delete a chart of account, a category from the chart of accounts, sorry. You can only archive. And the great thing about that is if you realize you've made a mistake, or if, for example, you no longer use an account at this point in time, but in the future it comes back into relevance, you can actually just restore it from the archive. So you can't do any kind of permanent damage by removing categories as you go through. And that's one of the things we'll often do with new clients is actually run through here and look for any codes that are not being used or aren't relevant to the business. You can see in this long chart, we've got a lot of zeros here, which suggests that these accounts aren't being used. And so you can come through and very carefully archive those that you don't need. Now, it is something to be done with a little bit of support from your accountant and bookkeeper to make sure you're not clearing off things that maybe haven't been used but are needed kind of in the short term. But as I say, because you can restore them, you can't really do any permanent damage. And it does help clearing these out, reduces the list that you have to select from when you're picking kind of from your sales invoices or bills. And so it can be quite a good exercise once or twice a year to come in here and see if there's anything you can remove. Whilst we're focusing on adding a new account in this one, you can also go into each and change the narrative. So, for example, business bank account, you might want to call it after the name of your bank. Sales, you might want to call it a particular sales type. So what is it you're selling? So you can come through and change the wording. So if you're looking at reports and things feel a bit alien and like they don't quite fit, you're allowed to come in here and change all of this so that it suits your business. So let's add a new account. So the first thing we need to do is pick an account type. I'm not going to go through all of these because some of them get quite techy in terms of accounting speak, but you can see they're broken down into assets, which are largely things that your business owns, Equity, which is the kind of share capital and reserves that fund the business. Expenses, so the costs the business incurs day to day. Liabilities, so those are the amounts that you actually currently owe to people or things or businesses. Revenue, so your sales. And so it's about going through and picking through which you want to add. Now, most of the time when people are adding their own categories into Xero, it's going to be a sale or an expense. In this one, I'm going to pick a direct cost. Now, as I say, you come up with a kind of request for a code here. You don't have to put one in, but if you want to kind of keep things neat, so all of them have codes, you want to make sure that you're putting a code somewhere around similar items. So I can see within the grayed out part of the screen that my other direct costs are largely in the 300 range. So I'm going to put in 300 on purpose, and it's going to tell me that I can't have that one because it's already in use. So let's try 305 and see what happens. And 305 is available. So I'm going to call this one, for want of a more imaginative title, New Direct Expense. Now, it can be whatever you want, whatever makes sense to you, you can put in here. You can then go through to add a description. This can be really useful because it can help anyone who comes in to support with your bookkeeping to understand what things you want to put in here. So you can just put in some narrative that helps that person understand, as I say, how this code should be used. You can then choose a default VAT rate as well if you're a VAT registered business. So if you know the costs normally that go into here have VAT on them, by setting this, it just helps prompt the system to apply VAT as it goes. And what I would say is for most businesses, if you are VAT registered and you're talking about expenses, I would default to put 20% on VAT as your default code, unless you clearly know that's not the case. You can also at this point choose to show on dashboard watch list. So when you log into Xero and you have your dashboard, there's a watch list that's normally on the right hand corner. If you click this code will appear there. So when you log in, you're getting an immediate prompt on the balance on that code. Show an expense claim. So if it's a category that people, like your team, can make an expense claim against, then you can tick to include that in the drop down that your team can pick when claiming. Or enable payments into this account. So this one's a slightly odd one. Payments can only be made in and out of banks, but every now and then you want to be able to mark a bill or a sales invoice as paid from a non-bank account. Now, it's a slightly advanced feature that, and I wouldn't worry too much about it, but from time to time you might find that you are asked to come in and tick this box by your bookkeeper or accountant. And just so you know where it is, that's where we are sitting. So when we click save, we will now have in our chart of accounts our new code. And so when we go up and create a new bill, or indeed kind of many other forms of transaction, I will now be able to type in 305 or new direct expense, or just see that within my expenses, I've got my new category. And you can see when I click it, it's pulling up that default 20% on VAT rate for me, just saving me a little bit of time. So that is how we add a new category or account code into Xero. We'll do some more videos soon. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to catch them as they come up. Thanks for watching.